From the headquarters of Telesur English in Caracas, Venezuela, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. "52 Venezuelans from the indigenous Yucpa community have returned home from Colombia thanks to the Return to the Homeland program. The group of men, women, and children were given medical checks as they arrived back on Venezuelan territory. From there, they are being taken back to their communities in the Perijá Hills of Zulia State. They decided to apply for the government's return plan after suffering economic hardship in Colombia. They boarded the buses to take them back. Earlier in the day, in 2 buses provided by the government, they gathered their belongings and they thanked the Venezuelan authorities. Around 1,700 citizens have returned to Venezuela from Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil since the program was launched. They include a number from the indigenous communities. 90 other Venezuelan migrants have returned to their country from Peru. Let's look at their stories.
Saw them leave. Now they are returning to their country. This is a new start. One marked by the experience.
There was a lot of racism and labor exploitation. The bosses hired us, and they didn't pay us when the week ended. They would do this every week. At the end of the month, they fired us. They took advantage of our situation while in Peru.
They are disappointed of a reality they did not know when they left Venezuela.
In these countries, they are taking advantage of Venezuelans who are migrating. They pay cheaper labor force, but we do the same work just like any other citizens of any country.
Now, a new path is waiting for them, a new vision of hope.
There is a lot of discrimination. This will be a learning experience to young people. Stay in your country, to work for your country. You can do it.
The Return to the Homeland program has brought back over 700 Venezuelans from Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil. They have also received comprehensive care. Now they are at home.
And Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has celebrated the success of the Return to the Homeland plan. On Twitter, Arreaza said the program will continue to bring migrants home from across Latin America. Arreaza also denounced the coup attempt promoted by the United States against President Nicolás Maduro. The New York Times has reported that U.S. high officials allegedly met with members of the Venezuelan army to oust Maduro. The report says the conversations between the coup plotters began in August 2017. Arreaza said the report is evidence of the U.S. attempts to intervene in Venezuela. A march in Chile has paid tribute to the victims of the dictatorship as the 45th anniversary of the coup against President Salvador Allende approaches. Demonstrators demanded memory, truth, and justice as they walked to a cemetery to remember the victims of the dictatorship. The Mapuche people, who continue to face violent state repression, were among those represented in the march. On September 11, authorities will commemorate the anniversary that marked the start of the regime of dictator Augusto Pinochet, which lasted for 17 years.
We, the Mapuche people, also march as we also suffer repression. We want truth and justice. We are also here because during these 28 years of pseudo-democracy we have been ignored. We were repressed during the dictatorship and we are now with the anti-terrorist law that criminalizes our struggle.
The judges who make a corporate defense for the people convicted of crimes against humanity do not obey the treaties or international agreements against these abominable and horrific crimes that they have committed against our families.
And let's go to another story. Now we have inside El Salvador, the FMLN has chosen its candidates for next year's presidential election. Thousands attended the ceremony in the capital. Hugo Martinez will be the presidential candidate and Karina Sosa his running mate, after winning the party's primaries. Martinez is a former foreign minister and Sosa is a lawmaker. If they win the elections in February, it would be the FMLN's third consecutive period in power. Our correspondent Ernesto Ábalos has more on the plans for the campaign.
¿Qué tal? Un saludo para ustedes y para nuestra audiencia.
Thousands of supporters from the Frente Farabundo Martí and members of other social organizations flooded the Cuscatlán Stadium in San Salvador during the party's 36th Congress. They proclaimed their candidates Hugo Martinez for president and Karina Sosa for vice president, and the election to be held on February 3, 2019. Sosa said she was committed to working towards women's rights, especially with the government plan called Ciudad Mujer. Martinez said his government will continue with the social programs that are already in place. Other pillars of his candidacy are education, health, and the fight against violence.
That was Ernesto Ábalos from El Salvador. The Workers' Party in Brazil has accused the commander of the army of trying to intervene in the coming presidential election. In a public statement, the Workers' Party warned that the army should not intervene in politics. The PT says this is, quote, something that the armed forces haven't done since the dark times of the dictatorship. Over 50 trans people have registered as candidates for the elections in Brazil. There are 17 trans candidates running for congressional seats, 33 for state Congress, 2 for district Congress, and 1 for the Senate. That is 10 times more than in the general elections of 2014. The proposals of the trans candidates go further than gender issues, with topics ranging from educational to social justice. The people of Rio de Janeiro have come together to begin the reconstruction of Brazil's National Museum. The museum burned down last Sunday, destroying 200 years of priceless artifacts.
The building that housed Brazil's National Museum survived the fire that destroyed 90% of the artifacts inside. Nearly 20 million pieces spanning millions of years of existence were lost. The academic community has promised to continue reconstruction efforts.
We didn't just lose Brazilian history. We lost artifacts representing millions of years of human history, like fossils, indigenous artifacts, and ancient insects.
One of the biggest losses was the oldest human fossil in the American continent, Egyptian mummies, along with countless archaeological and geological collections that told the history of the continent's original people.
This was an attack on our memory, on our history, on the original languages of Latin America. It's very serious, one of the worst attacks on the history of the indigenous people.
The National Museum is part of the University of Rio de Janeiro, which has faced large budget cuts since 2015. They've only become worse since President Michel Temer came to office. He cut the museum's budget by nearly $20 million.
It's not just the museum. The whole country is being affected by this perverse logic of budget cutbacks. We have started to mobilize, trying to show our reality, to inform people to fight these policies. To destroy Rio's university is to destroy the nation itself. It's destroying our future.
One of Michel Temer's first measures was a constitutional amendment that froze public investments for 20 years, greatly affecting culture and education.
I think there has to be political compromise so we as a nation can revoke these measures, because education, health, culture and even science are being eradicated.
The Brazilian people will not hold anything back in their efforts to see the museum be rebuilt. They also say they will take to the streets to demand that the constitutional amendment that froze public spending for 20 years be repealed.
Coming up, more stories. We'll be back.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More and more Argentines are going to soup kitchens in capital Buenos Aires, which has been hit by the economic crisis. Some places distribute around 2,000 meals each week. The government announced new austerity measures last week to face the recession, sparking protests. Hundreds of people have lost their jobs as the peso devaluated by 50% this year and inflation reached 40%.
The number of people that come has increased, especially several families. Around 100 or more families have come to the soup kitchen in the last month.
Every day we cook 600 or 700 food meals, only for this side of the soup kitchen. That's only lunch. Dinner is 500 or 700 more meals.
Hundreds of dismissed public workers from the former labor and agricultural ministries have taken to the streets of Argentina. They are rejecting the massive layoffs. Hundreds of workers have already been dismissed and fear that the number could increase. 12 ministries have been absorbed by other government offices as part of the austerity measures imposed by the government of Mauricio Macri.
Yesterday, I received the dismissal telegram. There are 500 of us who are now without work, and taking into account the country situation, the economic situation, we will not find work. 500 of us are out of work. In April, it was 300 people. Every week, they are dismissing more people.
There is a lot of uncertainty about the number of layoffs the situation can lead to, and with this in mind, public workers are mobilizing in all ministries throughout Argentina.
Meanwhile, 4 unions leading strikes in Buenos Aires have reached an agreement with the government on wage increase. On Friday, university teachers and students attended their lectures by blocking dozens of main avenues as part of the protest against government austerity measures. Protesters blame the government for burdening the country with a $50 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. Argentina is suffering its worst crisis since Macri was elected president. Barbados has signed a $290 million economic assistance agreement with the IMF. The IMF's executive board is expected to consider the proposed arrangement by October. Once approved, Barbados will have immediate access to $49 million. The Caribbean country has the 4th highest debt to GDP ratio in the world after Japan, Greece, and Sudan. And now to another story from Argentina. Football legend Diego Armando Maradona has arrived in Mexico to coach his new team, the Dorados of Sinaloa. Euphoric fans received Maradona on his arrival at the airport of the Mexican city of Culiacán in Sinaloa. The second division football club wants Maradona to stay for what remains of the 2018 season and next season as well. The Argentinian star says he loves Mexican football and the club league. There we see images of Maradona arriving and greeting his fans as well. 1 month has passed since Colombia's President Iván Duque took office. His supporters are enthusiastic, but others are worried.
During this first month, President Iván Duque has presented different measures in his agenda. Most of them have been presented by his cabinet of ministries, but critics say these are the proposals boosted by the country's economic powers.
It makes sense to tax certain products to then give the money to the families. And how do we do that? With the resources we get from these taxes.
According to economist Mario Valencia, the policies proposed by the Minister of Finance are just an extension of the neoliberal policies. These measures aim at strengthening the financial sector.
The taxes are applied to every product, regardless who's purchasing it. This is an indirect tax, so everyone pays the same, regardless their purchasing power.
Another heavily criticized proposal comes from the Minister of Defense. It aims at regulating social protest.
The state should guarantee that protests do not provoke violence. That is it. But if the police obstructs public demonstrations, that means they are violating our constitution and our laws.
The increase of basic wage is one of the most urgent topics. Just 15 days ago, Senator Álvaro Uribe proposed a hike to the minimum wage. But some analysts say this is just a strategy.
Uribe is using this as a tool and wrong and illegal. There's already a commission formed by employers and employees that is in charge of negotiating the minimum wage.
But if this proposal is approved, who would benefit from it?
What the bill is proposing is for the possible increase to benefit the financial sector and not the workers. This amount of increase would go to a public account and not to the workers.
The government is also promoting the so-called Diamond Plan, aimed at fighting drug trafficking. But many say the plan does not attack the root of the problem.
The state should guarantee the end of paramilitary groups. It should also guarantee the political participation and social integration of former FARC members. Another important topic touches on the protection of social leaders that continue to be killed and shows that the state has no political will in solving this.
The government is also working on reforms to the use of glyphosate, to ban marijuana, and the creation of a Ministry of Families. Another criticized move was the nomination of Alejandro Ordóñez as Colombia's representative in the Organization of American States.
Trade unions in Costa Rica have called for an open-ended strike to start on Monday. They are angry about the fiscal plan announced by the government. Trade unions say the economic reforms will only affect workers. Demonstrators also believe the measures won't fix the economy.
The working class has suffered enough. The government plan is nothing that worthy, nothing worthy for workers. We are not responsible for the economic situation, and we are not paying for it. We have proposals, but the government does not want to listen to us.
We are organized and ready to start on Monday with this indefinite national strike. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday we will hold a regional strike, and on Wednesday it will be national. We will also march in San Jose towards the National Assembly.
Our correspondent Fernando Francia has more from San Jose.
Estamos a pocas horas de que comience la huelga general indefinida convocada.
This indefinite general strike has been called by a number of public sector unions across the country. It is starting at 6 a.m. this Monday. They say that the solution to Costa Rica's fiscal problem is not to put more taxes on the population, but that the large companies, which evade taxes to the value of as much as 8% of the country's gross domestic product, are the ones who should pay more to solve the crisis. One concern people have is that of possible fuel shortages at gas stations. Because if state production stops, that could put in danger the fuel supply for the whole country. That could happen if the Costa Rica oil refinery shuts down. However, the government has said that it has already taken measures to prevent this.
Pero el gobierno ha dicho que ha tomado las medidas pertinentes para evitar ese tipo de paralizaciones.
That was Fernando Francia from San Jose. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us again. The center-left and center-right blocs in Sweden are neck and neck after Sunday's parliamentary election. The far right made progress, but not as much as they hoped. The ruling Social Democrats came first, but they have not won a majority. The far-right Sweden Democrats, a party with white supremacist roots, has risen to 19.2% of the votes. That's 7 points more than in the previous election.
I'm actually a bit scared, I have to be honest, because I don't know, again, I'm not Swedish, so I don't know what will happen to me. I mean, I'm a student here, but I don't know if I will be accepted, or if I will be treated as an immigrant. So, I'm scared.
In Yemen, dozens of people have been killed during heavy fighting between Houthi rebels and Saudi-led coalition-backed forces. It was just last week that UN-sponsored peace talks between these two sides collapsed. According to the Houthis' Al Masira TV, the UN had been unable to secure authorization from the Saudi-backed Yemeni government to have the Houthi movement land in the Sana'a airport, which in turn prevented the delegation from attending the talks in Geneva. UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, said that he would meet with Houthi representatives in Sana'a. China is defying the sanctions imposed by the United States on anyone buying oil from Iran. China has reached a record in its trade by purchasing 874,000 barrels of Iranian oil a day, according to Platts, a media organization focused on energy trade. By August 2018, China had already imported 72% of the Iranian crude it bought in the whole of 2017. Following China, Turkey has also said it will continue to buy oil from Iran. And Japan and India are said to be seeking a way to bypass the restrictions. Russia has accused the United States of bombing areas of eastern Syria with white phosphorus. Its use is prohibited by international law. A Russian military spokesman said the white phosphorus was used against civilians in the town of Hajin in the province of Deir ez-Zor. At the weekend, this happened. He recalled that this material is banned by international humanitarian law because of the serious burns it causes. He said they were investigating possible deaths and injuries caused by it. The Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu says that Turkey has sent military vehicles to Idlib province to prevent the Syrian army from conducting a possible military operation. The Turkish army has threatened to confront Syrian forces if they launch an offensive against Ankara-supported armed groups in that province of Syria. It says it has prepared military operations to bring down any Syrian warplanes that fly over their positions. On Sunday, the head of China's presidential envoy Lee Sang-ju met with President of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Kim Jong-un, in Pyongyang. The representative of the Communist Party of China presented a letter from Chinese President Xi Jinping. This representative attended activities marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of the DPRK, commonly known as North Korea. In that letter, Xi said the DPRK has made extraordinary achievements under the 3 recent successive socialist governments. Xi's letter said that both the Communist Party and the government of China were committed to safeguarding and developing bilateral relations. China has said that it is willing to work with the 2 Koreas to play a role in the building of peace on the Korean Peninsula. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also find us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are seeing also a message of some of the tropical storm that we're following on Twitter, which you can also find by following us at Telesur English. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.